To order the November 25th, 2025 Lakeville Area School Board meeting. If you'll please rise with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Take roll call starting from my right with our brand new member. Roll call starting with our right.
Tony Reichenberger.
Hey.
Tony Reichenberger.
Amber Cameron.
I'm Matt Swanson.
Michael Bauman.
Kim Baker.
Carly Anderson.
Brian Thompson.
All right. Are there any additions or revisions to the agenda from anyone? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as drafted.
So moved.
All right, motion by Director Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Director Reichenberger. All in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved. And we do want to welcome our new board member, and we're going to administer the oath of office.
Where should we go?
I'll call you up.
Okay.
You want to say a few words, if I may, sir?
Sure. Please do.
Thank you. Welcome, Director Reichenberger.
I don't think your mic's on.
Speaking right into it, as loud as I can. Check.
Try now.
Check. Oh. All right, Director Reichenberger, sir, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
And you know, now you were elected to guide the education of our community's children. And this power puts you in the position of being legally responsible for the equitable, quality education for all students in this district. And as you well know, the school board is accountable to our community. Many members are here right now. Many more are watching. Administration, my administration, we will strive to work together toward fulfilling the vision we have for our Lakeville area schools, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills and knowledge, civic responsibility, and personal development. Sir, welcome to the school board, and welcome to Lakeville area schools. Are you ready to take the oath?
I am.
Sir, if I may ask you to come forward.
And if it's okay, can I have my...
Yes, please. Please do. Ma'am, are you ready? Okay. Sir, are you ready? Yeah. Okay, all right. All right. Director Reichenberger, repeat after me, sir. I affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state.
I affirm I will support the Constitution of the United States and this state.
And that I will discharge faithfully
And I will discharge faithfully
the duties of this office of school board member
the duties of this office as school board member
of Independent School District 194
of Independent School District 194
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations, sir. Welcome.
We're going to take a quick break if you want to grab some pictures.
Here, let's move some chairs out of the way here. There we go.
Thank you. And then, could you please come in for one real quick?
You want me in here?
Yeah, right on the end. Matt, you're the chair.
All right. Again, congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Congrats. Thank you.
Superintendent Baumann, I'll turn it over to you for the good news.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. School Staff Appreciation Week is the week of the 17th through the 21st here in Lakeville area schools, and we're proud to recognize the many dedicated professionals who support our students, staff, and schools each and every day. Whether guiding students, maintaining safe and welcoming spaces, or keeping our schools running smoothly behind the scenes, each plays an essential role in fulfilling our mission and ensuring the academic, social, civic, and personal readiness for every student. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do. All right, one more item, and this is a fun one too. The Blazing Cats wrapped up their season on November 15th, where they claimed third place at the 2025 Adapted Soccer CI Tournament after a hard-fought state semifinal. They bounded back to earn the win against the Chaska, Chanhassen, Prior Lake Shakopee squad. The Blazing Cats brings together student athletes from Lakeville area schools, Farmington, and Burnsville. Congratulations on an outstanding season. A little round of applause there. If you want to read more about the amazing things happening in our district, isd194.org/news, and you can get all caught up. Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Baumann. We are going to move on to public comment. So the board will open up the floor for 30 minutes to allow the public to address the board with comments and concerns. To participate in public comment, individuals must have registered in advance using the form provided on our district website by noon on the Monday before our meeting. There will be no board response during the session, and public comments framed as complaints and/or concerns about students and/or staff are not appropriate in a public forum due to data privacy laws. These comments should be addressed to the administration outside of a public meeting. Likewise, complaints about school board members should be privately directed to the board chair and/or superintendent. If a comment is going that direction, you will be asked to stop and the microphone will be cut. No formal action will be taken on any specific topic presented during public comment. As necessary, the administration will follow up with the appropriate personnel on any concerns that need to be individually addressed. Also, if necessary, the board will follow up during board communications at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Individual remarks are limited to 3 minutes. The board will provide a signal when you've reached 30 seconds remaining of your time. And please try to keep audience noise to a minimum to allow everyone the opportunity to speak uninterrupted. With that, the first individual is Justin Muschel. Then also, I'd just ask that you try to speak into the microphone when you're up here.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Justin. I have a child that's graduating from Cherry View this year and slated to go to Century, and then after that, slated to go to Lakeville North. Cherry View, I believe, has historically been a feeder into Century, but I just wanted to kind of provide a little aspect from me when we're going into this potential boundary changes. So there was a previous boundary change that was, I haven't seen, new boundary change aspects yet, but there was a previous boundary change that grabbed kind of a bubble of neighborhoods up in the northeast and directed them down to McGuire, and I think that was about 6 months ago or so, and I came and talked to you about that, but I just wanted to kind of double check on that and let you know, just point out that if we do kind of like a bubble method like that, it's going to take my son, as well as others in our neighborhood, send them down to McGuire, and then they'll spend 3 years at McGuire. They'll be separated from their friend groups at Cherry View, and then have to make new friendships down in McGuire. But then since McGuire is a feeder into Lakeville South, if a boundary change like that occurs, then they would be separated from those friend groups again, and they would have to go up to Lakeville North and remake all those friend groups again, severely impacting these kids when they're in these transitionary phases. So I guess I've just got 2 asks. I'm going to succinct it down for you. Number one, with these upcoming boundary changes, please, if you can, keep Cherry View Wholesale as a feeder into Century. And if we can't do that, please make sure that there is some sort of option to open enroll for parents who it matters to, and that they could have that ability to. And then secondly, if there is some sort of boundary change that's proposed that has kind of like that bubble method right there, take time and energy to make sure that if we are doing something like that, it's not kind of going against the feeder programs that you have. So other kids aren't, being separated from their friend groups in such a small order like that. That's all I've got. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next individual, Johanna Surma.
Now for a much shorter person. Okay. Good evening, Chairman Swanson and directors of the board and Superintendent Bauman. My name is Johanna Surma, and I teach English learners at Oak Hills Elementary School. I also represent my colleagues as the lead negotiator for EML. I'm here to thank the district for deciding to return to the bargaining table and to encourage the board to help us reach a contract settlement that fully supports teachers so that we can fully support students. The Education Minnesota Lakeville negotiations team filed our intent to bargain with the district in March 2025. Despite our willingness to meet as soon as possible to start the process, the district did not hold a preliminary meeting with us until the end of June. The teacher contract then expired on July 1st. We did not meet again until the end of July to begin discussing proposals, and we have only met about once a month since then. By contrast, our neighbors in District 196 met every Tuesday and Thursday through much of the summer and settled their contract before the students walked through the door at the start of the school year. However slowly our negotiations were going, we did believe that they were progressing positively. So far this fall, EML focused the bulk of our organizing efforts on supporting the levy renewal. Educators dedicated substantial time to phone banking and hosting informational tables at sports events after the workday was done. That levy ultimately passed on Election Day, which we consider a big win for our students and our schools and the entire community. However, on November 5th, the day after the levy passed, the district declared that negotiations were at an impasse and filed for mediation. We were disappointed, as in our view, this was premature. The school board had not even had the opportunity to review your own corrections to your own financial proposal. We appreciate that earlier this evening you met in closed session. And so, we continue to meet internally to discuss how to reach a settlement. And we hope that you have engaged in the same discussions, because we truly believe we're not that far off and that we're negotiating on a lot of points of mutual interest. Our first mediation session is scheduled for January 8th, but we are really glad that the district has agreed to come back to the table on December 11th. EML remains committed to open dialogue, and we continue to be ready and willing to work, and willing to work collaboratively with the district to settle a fair contract. And although our contract expired almost 5 months ago, our educators remain dedicated to our students and to strengthening our schools. We believe a fair and timely settlement is in the best interest of the entire Lakeville community. So please, let's get this done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Brian Cohn.
Good evening, Chair Swanson, Superintendent Bauman, members of the board, our great members of the community, and our teachers who make our schools great. I want to start by just thanking Director Nicholson for his work and service to the board, and welcome Director Reichenberger to it as well. But I'm here really in support of our teachers and to encourage the district and the union to negotiate and come to an agreement quickly. I think that is, as a member of our community, I believe that is what is most important for us. We move here for our schools, and it is the teachers that make our schools the great ones that they are. When I signed up for this, I had this feeling of deja vu all over again, that thinking back to 2 years ago when we got to a very difficult mediation, the threats of strike, and I hope that we really do not come to that again. Let's encourage you to get back to work. As was just noted, our teachers put in tremendous work helping pass the levy, which, as they said, is a huge win for our community to maintain that. And we've got another bond referendum coming up in the fall, and we need their support to pass that. Also, I'm concerned that we're losing teachers here because other districts in the region are paying more in salary, and I hope that we can find a way to keep those teachers here in our district and keep that strength. So let's work to reduce that gap, agree on a contract, and let teachers get back to focusing on teaching our kids, and reaching that agreement is in the best interest of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Rudiger. Jean? All right, if there is no Jean, that will conclude our public comment session. We're going to move on to the consideration of approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that board members want to pull out for discussion? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. There's a motion by Director Cameron. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Baker. Being a first and a second, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda as drafted, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. Moving on to reports and discussion, Student Services Department. Ms. Humphrey, I believe.
Well, we can get started while the presentation gets pulled up. Good evening, Chair Swanson, members of the board, Superintendent Baumann. We are here on behalf of the Student Services Department to give a little bit of updates that are stemming from the October 28th school board discussion. So we're here to share just some information about the metrics that we are using for EL, as well as some special education metrics that we would be adding to the dashboard. Also, we want to talk about some of the current inclusive practices that we have here in Lakeville, and then talk about some of the efforts that we are doing to help retain staff. So I have members of my department here, and I will let them introduce themselves as they go through the board, or the presentation as well. We can skip forward to the next. Where's the remote? Thank you.
Good evening, board. I'm Alexia Puppy-Finley, Director of Special Services. I'm glad to be here tonight, Chair Swanson, members, and Superintendent Baumann. Starting with grounding us in who we're serving in our population. My understanding is some of you may have seen this before, but again, grounding us in for FY26, we're currently serving around 2,067 students. That is making up about 17% of our population of students with special education support.
It'll bend down. There you go.
Good evening, Chair Swanson, board members, welcome, and Superintendent Baumann. My name is Karen Kuhn. I'm the Director of Student Health, Safety, and Wellness here, and I have the privilege of talking about our English language services that we have in our district, and as a board metric, we have access testing. So I'll be telling you a little bit about access testing, but I wanted to look at our our total number of students receiving EL services. Over the past 5 years, you can see the trend is moving upward. And it's also important to note that these are numbers served throughout the year, not just at one given snapshot. Our EL population here tends to be a little mobile, and they move in and out. They can be gone for an extended absence of up to anywhere from 6 weeks. And we also have migrant students who might be here just in the fall and or in the spring. So we look at the total number served throughout the year. Another interesting, I guess, data point that we want to always consider are how many students our recently arrived English learners, RAILs, as they're called. RAILs are in their first year of enrollment in the U.S. schools, and you can see that trend here in Lakeville is also is going up, and we're almost at where we served all last year, and this is just data through this month. So the board metric is our access. So what is our access test? What is that? It's an English language test. It's a proficiency assessment, not an academic test. It's required under federal law. Annually, it's taken and it's administered to all K-12 students identified as English learners. It measures academic proficiency in 4 domains, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And you can see by that graph, the writing and reading are weighted 35%, while speaking and listening are 15%. So understanding the access scores, what do they mean? So scores range from anywhere from 1, entering the language, and 6, really reaching. And proficient means an overall composite score of 4.5, and 3 of the domains, 3 of the 4, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, are at least 3.5. So when a student has those 4.5 and 3, at least 3.5, they can exit services. We really look at growth over time, not just one single score. A student can actually take multiple years to meet proficiency, but that doesn't mean they're not making progress over time. So we really look at that. And it might even take a while for them to jump a level. They can have little incremental growth. So it's important to look over time. So putting this in action, what do we do with those scores? There are several ways that we look at the scores and what we do. First, when students demonstrate or show some lower proficiency rates, we increase their frequency and their intensity of the EL services. We also look at those scores for student groupings to create student schedules, and those students might need co-teaching or sheltered instruction, and I will define those in a later slide. We use the data to adjust our staffing resources and allocate other resources as well, and just an overall program model effectiveness. So beyond access, we do look at our EL subgroup when we look through our MCA data, our FastBridge results, attendance trends, and graduation rates as well.
Chair, do you want us to hold all questions till the end, or do you want us to ask while you're doing it, since there's 3 of you presenting?
You can feel free to ask along the way.
Okay. I just had one question for Karen. I was looking at the slide that you shared about the increase of our EL students since 2021, 2022. What ratio are you using to determine when we need to add more staffing to specific buildings based on the fact that our numbers are increasing?
That is a great question. Currently, we use a weighted formula that equals almost about 1 to 35, but it is weighted, given more weight to a recently arrived or a newcomer.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if their proficiency rate is on the higher end, they're weighted less, which is other districts also use weighted or a ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Question, just so we're clear for the public too, what do services entail, and then how much of the day is that, and are the services allocated differently based on where they're at on the proficiency scale?
They are, and I would be happy to share that at another. I can come back and share that. There's different models, there's different times that we suggest if their proficiency rate is a 1 to 2, basis of 3 to 4. But
And I guess I'm just wondering, because I was in a class, and my understanding was like one student might get 30 minutes out of the entire
Yes.
day, and then they're just in the classroom the rest of the day.
Yes. So it really depends on their proficiency rate, the recommended amount of services.
Sorry, Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interject with questions.
You're fine.
Shoot, sorry. So I guess one question I have, this estimate that you have through 11/19/25 for ELL as well as that number, is that higher than you anticipated for where we should be this year? And do you have any projections about, this seems complicated in terms of how to anticipate who's coming into our system, and then, like you're saying, depending on what level they're at and what they need, and so how are you prepared for that on a staffing level, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
That's a great question. It is, there are more than we anticipated, so we just did look at our staffing.
Karen, can you talk into the microphone?
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you. We just did a staffing review and allocated additional staffing where they were understaffed,
Okay,
based on that weighted formula.
okay. And do you feel at this point that we have the staffing to meet the needs?
When we have those positions hired, yes.
Okay, so right now we're trying to hire for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Director Cameron?
Related to that, are there standards that our district has developed of like how many minutes of service a student in EL should receive? Okay, great.
Yes.
And to what,
Yes.
are we meeting those standards that we've set, or how are we doing on that?
I would say in general, yes, we are meeting. Now, we do have those buildings that we're trying to hire staffing that may be meeting, but it's becoming difficult, a challenge to meet those minutes and scheduling them all.
Okay.
But I think overall, we're able to do that.
Okay. And then this maybe goes back a little bit to just the process. How are we identifying students when they enroll in our district that they should be screened for EL services?
So when they enroll, the family takes a survey, and if English is not their first language in any of the questions, it's a longer story, but in general, they are, for lack of better words, flagged, and then we do a screener. The ELD, the English Language Development teachers at each building, then goes through and does a screener with them, and if they qualify for services, then they are identified as an English learner.
Okay, great. So like any family that might mark a language other than English, we check to see what the
Yes.
student's English proficiency
Yes.
is. Okay, thank you.
Director Thompson?
This is fascinating. I appreciate sharing the data here. I mean, we've got 700, almost 10%, 8% or so of our students that are receiving English language services. But for the reals, like we've got over 100 of them. So I'm trying to understand the day in the life of these students, because they can't speak English at all, and they only get 30 minutes. What do they do for if it's more than, like, what do they do for 6 hours because they're not, like, in the are they in the classroom, or where are they?
They get more than 30 minutes if they're new to the country. They get more. Those kids that get 30 minutes might be like on proficiency scale 4. So these kids are at a 1, so they will get more intensive service. And yes, what do? Our ELD teachers, English Language Development teachers, are working and collaborating with those general ed teachers, and they're trying to teach the routines, how to be a student, how to communicate in a building, how to navigate the building, who do I go to? It is very challenging.
Do we have an ELDT in every single building? Because I'm assuming you've got 104 scattered in all of our buildings.
At least, yes.
Got it. All right.
There we go. Okay, we were tasked with the school board meeting in October with coming up with student services board metrics for special education as well. When we were tasked with that, we sought different stakeholder input, one of them being our SEAC meeting, to say what would our families, what makes sense, and to our educators, what makes sense to gather and report out on. And what we're here to share with you today is that we are prepared to share as part of the board metrics around FastBridge, which is, you probably know that one. Our general education peers are also take the FastBridge assessment, and that'll be able to be tracked fall, winter, spring, and we're looking for individual growth by student. And then also focusing on our inclusion. So what is the percentage of our students in setting 1, 2, and 3? And how do we ensure they're getting the services that they need at each of those levels? I think I have the next one too. Yes. And another part around inclusion is of how we have expanded our programming at each of our sites. So this year in early childhood, we have a pilot of doing a co-taught class of a general education teacher and a special education teacher. And then we have that throughout our different programming levels. So at the middle school and the high school level. What's beautiful about that opportunity is we have a core content licensed teacher that is co-teaching in the room with a special education teacher. So you have the content knowledge and the special education knowledge in the same room supporting the students.
Our English learners also have some inclusive opportunities. In elementary, they do some push-in during their literacy block, which that means is that English language development teacher goes into that general ed classroom and does some type of co-teaching or stations or things like that. Middle schools, our teachers participate in that teaming model, and they have some common planning time with their general ed cohorts. And also at the high school, similar to special education, at Lakeville North, we have co-taught English and math, which is a content specialist along with a ELD teacher. And we also have sheltered classes. At North, they have social studies and English. At South, they have English. So sheltered is one teacher who has a dual license, ESL, and that content.
Director Baker.
Do we still have unified PE as an option at the high school?
Loosely. That is something, though, that we are working on strengthening.
Okay, thank you.
Special education shout-outs, a way that also inclusion and celebration for our special education staff. Something that we started this school year is our special education newsletter. The audience are special education staff and building administrators. The purpose of the newsletter is, one, to be able to shout out and recognize special education staff or teams for what they're doing and the successes that we're having with our programming, and also professional development. How can we dose little things around professional development within the newsletter? This helps support the culture of recognition and celebrating the staff for what they do every day.
And then last, we just wanted to touch on the Student Services Content Mentoring Program. So last year, the district was able to bring the mentoring program into the district. This year, we're able to expand it a little more, and in partnership with the Teaching and Learning Department, we've really been able to focus on our student services staff, so our counselors, our ELD teachers, occupational therapists, speech and special education teachers, with matching them up with content mentors. So we have 10 content mentors, and at this time, we've had about 55 new staff that we have matched those mentors with. So that's It's a start. We, of course, want to continue to do more to recognize all of the work that our teachers are putting in to support all of our students. So we just wanted to highlight that and see if there's any other questions or wonderings.
Director Anderson.
Sorry, I'm going to go back to the slide on the special education enrollment. Is that number also expected to increase across the year? Are most kids identified at this time?
No, that number also fluctuates throughout the year based on, we have students that exit services because they've met their goals. We also have new students coming in that have gone through some intervention process and they're still not making progress with those interventions. So we would be doing initial special education evaluations, but I would anticipate that number to grow.
And any thoughts about that growth or what's contributing to that?
You know, I would say it's really, it's our whole system. The stronger interventions that we can have before students enter into special education, that's one way to help not let students come into special education. So we're working real hard to continue to build all of the interventions that we have around academics and social emotional learning. And so that's part of it. For the kids that are identified, sometimes once they are identified, they need more services that the IEP team deems necessary, and that just may be because they're not making growth in whatever their goal area is. So the IEP team comes back together to look at services, look at the quality of those services, and potentially increase services.
Director Cameron.
A question related to this chart as well. Do we look at, and I know we don't have defined peer districts, but do we look at, compared to our peers, how are our special education rates? Or, are we comparable? Are we high? Are we low? Is that a metric that is ever evaluated?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I can share that within our member district area, what we're seeing in terms of growth of special education in our neighboring districts is not anything new or out of the ordinary. I would say, in particular, across the state of Minnesota, there's quite a few school districts, in particular with their center-based programs, that are having upwards of 10 students in a center-based program, and that's definitely not ideal with what we want in being able to provide services to those students. But I'd say across the state and even within our neighboring districts, students are coming to us with I'd say pretty complex challenges, and we're working really hard to try to meet what those challenges and needs are.
And then relatedly, does our district look at, and I realize it's not on this chart, but just behind the scenes, are we looking at student demographics and special education enrollment rates, tracking trends there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
And then to your last slide on the mentorship program, that's great to see. I know we've been needing a mentorship program here for quite some time. Of the approximately 55 staff who you mentioned in the student support roles, is that almost all of the student support roles that were newly hired? Or, okay, so almost all have a mentor that were hired in those categories? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes. All of the staff have been offered a mentor. Yes.
Okay, great.
Director Thompson, did you have a question? All right, Director Baker.
So same question for you that I asked for Karen. Given the fact that we see quite an increase in our special education population, the percentage of students that are qualifying for those services, what are you using to determine like the ratios for when you need more teachers in some of those areas? I know that it's been things that we have talked about within this district over the past several years are special ed caseload numbers based on setting, and if those numbers, if there's a a limit that we need to put on that, such as like when we do for an elementary class size? Are those things that you're discussing, or what are you using to determine if those caseloads are too much for a teacher to handle?
So we do look at caseload numbers on a very regular basis. I mean, I would say biweekly, if not weekly, depending on the time of the year. There's also a lot of factors that go into case numbers and the minutes that students are using. We do have the guidelines that we are using that I believe with that report, the special education report that you guys received, those are the guidelines that we look at. I can stand up here and say, honestly, we do have a lot of our teachers that are a few students above what those guidelines are. And when that happens, we take a look and come together to assess. Really, it comes down to prioritizing the need. And the need is great all over, but knowing that we only have a certain amount of resources, that's how we're making decisions, is looking at those guidelines for caseload numbers and looking at the needs across the district in terms of anything with student services. So that includes, our EL teachers, resource teachers, occupational therapists and looking to see what we can do to help support.
Thank you.
Where are we at roughly right now in open positions for both EL and SPED?
Well, for EL, I believe we have, well, Karen, you might be able to answer a little bit better, but 0.8.
A total of 1.0 FTE.
Okay.
What does that mean when you say a total? Can you explain that?
Split between buildings.
I figured,
It's,
but
it's a 0.2 at 3 different buildings and a 0.4 at 1 building.
Is that common? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
We're adding to it.
for special education.
I would say roughly 10, and that's a combination of licensed staff and non-licensed staff.
Are we backfilling some of those positions right now with contract work, or?
Yes, we have had mixed luck with contracted employees, but we are absolutely, if we have an agency that sends us a viable candidate, we are interviewing them and bringing them in if it makes sense and hoping to keep them.
For the teachers that you've identified where their caseloads are above where we would like, that's our target, are they getting an overload FTE for that, or are we discussing any possibilities of maybe adding more paraprofessional support if we can't hire another teacher just to help with some of that workload?
All of those strategies are discussed and considered, yes.
Director Anderson?
Sorry, I have one more question, then I'm going to stop. So has there been any change in terms of open enrollment with our special education across time, or is that pretty stable? I guess I'm wondering, are we having more people open enroll into the district specifically for special ed services?
I would say that's something that we would want to take a look into and can get back to you. Okay. Just within this year where we're at, though, I would say we are very similar to where we were last year with open enrollments. It's our families that live here in Lakeville that are.
All right. Any other questions? Director Thompson?
It's probably less of a question, just more of an observation. I mean, I think for our 25 budget, we allocated about $40 million roughly to special education. And when I look at the special education percentage of students of 2,067, like that's roughly $19,000, which is the cost of a special education student. If we're anticipating the special education enrollment percentage to increase, if that's what you're projecting, that's going to obviously impact our general fund balance as well as our general balance as a whole. And so we've got to think more strategically around how do we ensure that our school district has the appropriate funding to ensure this is taken care of, as well as our general population. And so as we think about future budgeting for the next school year, I mean, if this number is going to continue to rise up, it's not like we can just assume the dollars that the state will provide is going to cover. It's not. And so we as a community will have to fund those additional, that gap. And so if that's how I'm understanding this, so.
Thank you. Mr. Holmgren, I think you're up.
Good evening. Excuse me. Chair Swanson, Director of the School Board, Superintendent Bauman. I'm going to spend a little time this evening giving you an update on our budget, our 26 budget, where we're at, and then talk about a little bit of a future look at where we think our fund balance is going to go over the next 5 years. Now, we look at this every month now. You see that the blue column there is our 26 numbers. This is our revenue numbers. You can see our revenue numbers are coming in a little sooner than we have in the past. We're very pleased about that. It really helps our cash flow position. When we switch over to the expenditures, you see that in most cases, our expenditures are coming a little less than they did at this time last year, except for our purchase services and some supplies, and that's mainly our LTFM projects that are coming through a little faster, and we're paying for those as we worked on them through the summer. So again, this budget's acting just like it should. When we switch over to the program level, you'll see the same thing. You see here the admin, direct support, our regular programming in elementary and secondary education. Nothing here is going higher than it did the year before. I always get a question this time of year. It's like, why is admin running at 32 and we only have elementary and secondary here at 18%? That's because teachers don't start getting paid until we get to September. So the admins, district, the DO portion of this, they work all summer long. So that's why you're seeing a higher percentage there. One thing, if you look hard at it, pupil support, you see in that we do have a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a higher bump there at 18.8%. And that's primarily our transportation contract. So we're looking hard at that. It's probably something we're going to have to look at our revised budget and bump that up a little bit. It's run a little higher than we anticipated. The other one that looks a little funny is you see community ed. Well, community ed's not part of general fund, right? But that's our summer unemployment that we have to run through the general fund for community education employees. There was one small payment earlier this year. Most of the payments are made right now this week, the end of November. So next month you'll see all those pop up. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our 5-year projection. We're going to talk about the variables that we put into a model where we look at our forecasting our budget forward. So we're we'll look at detail on our levy variables and then our state, and of course we're going to look at our expenditures going through those years. Again, this is our newest projection on our enrollment. We're seeing about a 1% increase each year, and when we look at the students that we have right now enrolled in buildings, we are up that 1%. So this carries true. When we look at our levy variables, we'll talk a lot about levy here this next month. But when we look at our...
Can you go back one more slide? I just want to make sure I understand that this, like, we added 1,000 students over the past 6 years, if that's how I'm reading this.
That's correct.
And then we're looking to add another 1,000 students over the next 15 years. So our growth we are growing, but not at the speed that we have historically have been.
Yeah, we talked about this budget-wise here this past year, where we really saw our growth really slow down, and we've had to make some adjustments on our revenue projections to really slow it down a little bit. So
22-23 to 23-24, you see almost a flat. And our growth projections going back to 2020 were at a steeper glide path up. So this revision, I think, does sound or ring true, where I think you get a little bit more difficult. And as I've shared, we will continue to iteratively look at this. But 27, 28, 28, 29, there could be some movement there. And as you've seen in other presentations, the southwest and northeast areas of Lakeville are growing and conditions are set for growth. So we will continue to refine and make sure that the picture you see is as true as possible. When you get way out there into the 7, 8, 9 years from now, I'd say the fidelity is under 50% accurate, just by my experience with this.
Taking a look at our variables, when we look at our levy on a yearly basis, what we're seeing is about a 2% increase in the inflation that happens on a yearly basis. And then we do have inflation factors built into our operating levies, so we get that small increase on a yearly basis. But the rest of these things don't change. The numbers that we get per pupil unit are constant. So when we look at our local operating revenue, $724, it's been that way for many, many years. Our equity dollars is a formula where the state tries to match us up with other school districts. Everybody kind of gets the same. So we get a little bump there with an extra $88 per pupil unit. Our Safe Schools money, really, most of this money is spent on our school resource officers. Same number has been for many, many years. Our lease levy, as you know, we're up at the cap of our lease levy at $212, and it's been that way for many years from the state of Minnesota. Our operating capital, that's a formula. It's based on how old our buildings are more than anything else. But right now we're getting $221 to help with our capital costs. And then our capital projects levy, that's the one piece of our revenue that's based on a tax rate. The tax rate remains constant, so as our net tax capacity grows, we get a little more dollars there on a yearly basis. Our achievement and integration, you see there we get about $560,000 through our levy. That's about 35% of our grant that we get. The state of Minnesota covers the rest at about $1 million. And then our vocational also, about 35% of the expenditures that we have. It's kind of like a reimbursement process where we get money back through our levy, about $500,000. We switch over to the variables that we have from the state of Minnesota. Here you see that in the year we're in, fiscal year 26, we just received 2.74%, which is $200 per pupil unit, now that our total now is at $7,481. The other piece that we get increase from, of course, is our enrollment. That's why I have enrollment driven. We're seeing about a 1% increase in our enrollment. Well, staffing kind of follows that. We need staff to cover or to serve those particular students. So we're seeing about 1% increase there in our formula allowance for those students. Pension, this is a dollar amount that we get from the state of Minnesota to help pay for the increases in TRA that they've mandated here the last few years. Our gifted and talented, we get $13 per pupil unit. It's been that way for many, many years. Our extended time dollars don't see those increases like we see in the formula allowance, but that's kind of locked in there at $5,000, a little over $5,000. And as I said earlier, the local optional revenue, the portion we get there is $724, but of course part of that comes from the state of Minnesota. And then our Q-Comp dollars, again, 65% comes from the state of Minnesota. The other comes from our levy. So these are all the numbers that we use in a model, a budgeting model, to push these forward. You can see here then from the state of Minnesota, we get almost 70% of our.
Director Thompson.
Hey, Bill, can you there was a lot of numbers being shown here. Can you just try to help me simplify it? Like, what would be the average for every student / pupil? What do we get from the state total? And what would be the average for that we get from levies for that student? Is there a way that we can just kind of simplify this?
If you put all these numbers together, both the levy side and the state of Minnesota side, we get about $10,000 per student on the revenue side each year.
And then how much of that is coming from our local property taxes or the school levies? Is that roughly?
About 25.5%. We get from our levy. The rest, we get 69% comes from the state of Minnesota. And then you see some smaller amounts are federal. We talk a lot about federal dollars, but there's really a very small piece that we get from them. We have some special education dollars we get from the federal government, and we have some title grants that we get some dollars from. So you can see that's only 1.6% of our revenue budget. And of course, the local, these are any fees that we're collecting. Here, it's if you go to a game, you pay a gate fee to get in, that's in that 4%.
Director Anderson, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. I shouldn't apologize. I have a question. So in terms of I know we've talked about this before when we've considered if we were going to go for a levy, how much could we ask? Like I am wondering, with what we're getting total for a student, we get a set amount from the state, and then we levy our community for a certain amount. How big of a gap are we in terms of what we are able to levy and what we could levy? Or what we currently levy versus what
We are not that far off of the cap, but we do have room for about $400 per pupil unit that we could ask for a new operating levy with. And that would generate us about $5 million. And then we'd be at the cap.
And is there an exception with other districts where they're able to levy for more?
No, the cap is the same for everybody. Some districts have the inflation factor built into the operating levies where theirs don't move up, but that cap moves up with that inflation rate on a yearly basis. So every single year that cap, statewide cap, grows a little bit for the inflation portion.
So what we are getting for every student is similar to some of the other districts we compare ourselves to, like Minnetonka.
Yeah, well, you look on the west side of the metro, Minnetonka, Wayzata, they're at the cap.
Right.
Okay, they're getting that other $400 per pupil unit.
What happens when you hit the cap?
Well, then you can't go
Can't
out
ask.
and ask for any new operating levies.
Yes.
I mean, there is no more revenue
Yep.
to get. That is the max.
And this is where we have to be thoughtful around. I mean, we just looked at the special education numbers, and those are going to continue to increase. But once we hit the cap, like we can't ask for any more. And so if we've got a $400 room to bring out to the community and say, hey, XYZ, that's going to give us about $5 million extra dollars towards our general fund. But then we can't ask for any more money. And so that $5 million might need to be used for future operating expenditures, like the principals of a new middle school, like we had to do for Highview. That was about $1.5 million. So we need to be really thoughtful around if we bring anything forward, we can't spend it on it. Like we don't. This is it. Like once we're done spending, we're done spending. And so
I mean, unless you have growth, because it's per pupil. So
agreed.
as you grow,
Yes.
$400
yeah,
is going to be more.
but that growth should cover the additional staff of teachers for those new students.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But bond referendums are also different if you're
Yeah.
you're building.
Yeah, so
That's
bonds are different, but the
Yeah.
the extra $400 are operating expenditures, which is two separate things. Oh, sorry.
But I
Richard
think
Cameron.
to that, Brian, and I agree with you that once we hit the cap, we hit the cap. But and Bill and Superintendent Bauman interject here, but how I would imagine if you're at the cap, you're not tied to spending that money in those ways indefinitely. You just have a bigger pot of money to do more things with every year, over and over and over again. And we don't have that capability right now.
Director Thompson.
But if we allocate those funding to recurring expenditures, then we really can't move it around too much. So we got, yes.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. Can we switch over and talk about our variables with our expenditures? Staffing, again, is totally driven by our enrollment. When we look at increases on a yearly basis, the average increase for our staff members is about 3%. We have 4% built into this model because we're seeing that 1% increase in the number of staff that we have on hand. So that's why we see a 4% here. Benefits are running right about a 3% increase on a yearly basis, and along with our purchase services. And of course, purchase services, a lot of this is driven by our contractors, and we're looking at maintenance on our buildings. We look at our supplies and equipment and some other smaller expenses. We've built a 2% increase into that model. So this is a little busier, but it breaks it up by program. But you can see that when you look at our elementary and secondary education, along with vocational, special education, and then the support pieces that we give our students, they're over 80% of our budget is directly goes to our students. And again, I guess I want to point out, like administration, you see it at 2.3. That's actually, we're about the lowest when we look at our administration in districts around us. Lots of districts that's running close to 4%. Now, here's some other things just to keep in mind. I mean, really are some key budget constraints over the next 5 years. Structural operating gap risk. Our revenue is growing slower than our costs. And this is well, it's been that way in schools for very many years, right? The state of Minnesota, over the last several years, our average increase is 2%. So over the last couple of years, we've seen some bigger increases, and we've had a lot of inflation risk, but that's really helped us cover some of those costs. We look at special ed and EL, which we talked about this evening. That growth will continue, and it's going to pressure the general fund.
Can I just ask one question about the administration numbers that you mentioned? You said those were lower. And I know that administration is that including principals, assistant principals / deans, and all of our non-affiliated? Is that all included in administration?
Administration is the superintendent's office and it's the principal offices. That's all.
So
that's
not
there.
the non-affiliated?
Well, non-affiliated, they're all over. It depends what they do, okay? Because they fit into the area of the budget that they do their work. For an example, all of the assistant principals, deans, they're in the support service area. They're not in administration. So you'll see them in the support areas.
Right, but I do feel like there are people that are under our non-affiliated contracts that we would consider administrators based on what they're doing for their jobs, correct?
No. Way back, if you our administrators are only administrators that are the way that the state of Minnesota wants us to code those particular employees. Okay?
Right.
So the superintendent's office, actually the board members, your pay is in administration, and then all the principals, their offices. That's
Okay.
what's in administration.
So like
When we look at the directors that work in the DO, that's that next one, that support service.
So like supervisors wouldn't count?
Supervisor, it depends what they do.
Okay, because I mean, I'm just looking like at our numbers just in general. Our non-affiliated has went up to like, I think the last count was 89.43. And then when I look at principals, we have 14, and then deans like 18. So I'm just trying to figure out what the percentage, what's all included in that percentage.
Okay. Well, the district support services where a lot of those non-affiliated persons you're talking about, that's
Yep.
where they fit.
Okay.
But the administration number here is just the principals and in their offices and the superintendent's office.
Okay, thanks.
Are those codings consistent across districts in the state?
We have a very large book, a UFARS book, where we're told where they expect us to code different expenditures, and it's pretty detailed.
Yeah, let me just address this. The Uniform Finance and Accounting Reporting System by the state of Minnesota defines what all these categories are for the purposes of financial reporting. So that's the base document. And we do comparative analysis based on UFARS through our budget analysis tool that gives us all the data for all schools in the state of Minnesota, and we compare ourselves based on the UFAR standard. So that's what you're seeing there. So I just want to make sure everybody understands. If they want to go reference it, that's the document to reference, the Uniform Finance and Accounting Reporting System for the state of Minnesota.
And I'm just clarifying because when we get questions based on staffing, that's the one question that always comes back to me is, why is our administration so top heavy? Like, that's what I get. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on how that is coded and so that that number makes sense to our public as well.
Okay, I'm going to hit the third bullet here. Benefits and mandates create compounding cost increases. Things happen, mandates come to us that we don't get new funding for. It happens all the time. As you know, right now the state of Minnesota just put on a family leave, paid family leave. That's a new cost for us that starts here in January that we haven't had before, and we've received no revenue to pay for those costs. Fund balance constraints reduce resilience to economic or cost shocks. So that's one reason we've talked about needing that fund balance up higher, because when we get something that happens, we got to be able to take that shock and have enough money to cover. And of course, increasing tension between program quality expectations and our fiscal stability. So it's always very difficult to bring on any type of new programming because our our funding hasn't increased anywhere. So it has to be a trade-off with a different programming area. Okay, so you can see our fund balance here has rebounded over the last few years, which we feel good about. But when we look at going forward, you see that we do still have some positive pieces in the near term. We're looking at about a 1.5% increase in our fund balance. I know the board wants us to get up to that 10% piece. So it looks like we'll hit that in about June of 28. But again, looking at, because our costs grow more faster than our revenue, that's why you're seeing that kind of top off there at 10% and start to come down. Of course, the more years you get out, it's very difficult to really have a hard number. So don't take these for gospel truth, but the next couple of years are pretty close.
So what's the strategy to deal with that then?
Well, every year we have to look at the revenue we have and look at our programming. And if we are upside down in our revenues, then we've got to make some decisions on our programming and whether we can keep certain things in place.
Director Thompson.
I appreciate this view, and so because it has line of sight from where we were back in 23, and then it took us almost 6 years to get our fund balance where it needs to be. And for general clarity, the fund balance, I would again view that, I would term that as our savings account. And again, I want to continue to reiterate that ideally we want to have roughly 10% of our yearly expenditures in our savings account. And so when we spend about $210 million a year out of our general fund, we generally need about $20 million in our savings account. And $20 million, while it does sound like a lot, that's only 3 months worth of our expenditures. So if we don't get funding from the state, from the federal, for property taxes or whatever it may be, $20 million lets us survive 90 days, and that's it. And so that is kind of the norm that other districts are generally at. And so once we get here, that gives us a lot more flexibility in how we want to move forward, but also protects us where, like you said, when mandates do come down that we're not familiar, that we weren't anticipating or aren't funded, we've got the capital to kind of offset that, but figure out how to make those financial budget changes for the following year if needed to recalibrate. But that's fantastic. But again, it took a long time for us to get here, and it's so thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Back to facilities.
Okay. Let's see, is the slides going to come up? Or do I just click? Oh, there we got to click. Okay. So good evening, Chair Swanson. I think we're in evening time. Yes. Chair Swanson, directors, and Superintendent Bauman, and the community. My name's Lucas Yoho. I'm the Executive Director of Operations. I'll be giving you a Facilities Vision 2035 update, and then we'll talk through some attendance area planning as well. So really the purpose of tonight's brief in terms of the facilities vision is really to continue the discussion and to continue to provide you information so you can make decisions, informed decisions about the future of our facilities through 2035. Since our last meeting, the staff has answered some RFIs from the school board. We've continued to refine our products and our planning. And then we also conducted an input session with approximately 20 of our educators last night in terms of their ideas for the facilities for the next 10 years. It was a great discussion with our educators, and we're currently collating that data, and then we'll provide that to you at the next school board meeting for your consideration. Okay, so you're going to see a few slides here. Some of them will look very familiar, and then I'll highlight some of the more significant RFIs that we received over the last week. This is the slide you saw on 11 November. I would like to highlight number 6. We did come in and finish our review with high school stadium upgrades, and that comes in at $11.4 million. And really what that's looking at is bathrooms, concessions, and then, part of that process, ultimately team rooms, and that brings a level of equity to both North High School and South High School in terms of those facilities with some ancillary effects is those team rooms and then some storage that kind of moves out of that space as well. So we think that brings some good equity to those
Director
stadiums.
Thompson?
Can we just make sure that we're on the same page on this facility advisory group? This facility advisory group is a group of folks of 10 folks and some folks from the district?
Yes, it was district staff, it was school principals, selected school principals, and then community members.
Got it.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I want to make sure I'm on the same page. This facility advisory group, this is what the district is recommending as well.
This is what the facility advisory group recommendation is recommended coming out of that, not what the district staff is recommending.
Okay, so this is a facility group of 10 folks, some folks from the district. We haven't seen the list that the district wants. We haven't seen the list that the staff wants, and we haven't seen the list that the community wants so far.
Well, I would say that the community was part of this group here.
The 10 people.
Yeah, yes, right.
Okay.
Now, that's not the entire community, right?
Nope, it's fair. Yep.
And then what we're also doing is Morris Leatherman is conducting a survey that has a lot of this data in it to kind of get that take as well. Again, that'll be a small representative population as well.
Yeah, I mean, I share this because I want to make sure that we're on the same page with what we're sharing here, and when community members watch this video, that this facility advisory group, they are 10 folks and district folks, but the board, while we saw this last week, haven't had a lot of conversations on what we also think is important. Will the district be coming forward with your priority list without any other input from other folks? Like, you've got your list. Okay. And then
We also had, I think Lucas mentioned that we did have a meeting last night with educators, and we need to synthesize that data as well. And then at our work session on the 2nd of September, December, we'll bring those things forward to the board as well. And that will also create the opportunity for board members to further provide input and priorities for you. It's not our intent it's not our intent to just have one set of folks provide information. However, the work that they do needs to be put in front of you and in front of our community. The community survey, and this is not marginally different than how we've done this process over many iterations in the past. Highview got built that way. Our additions at our elementaries got built that way, and before that, the corridor down IPAVA of school buildings. So this is not new. The review and comment requirement by the state of Minnesota does require a public process, and so we have to be able to report on that, and we are doing everything we can to meet that obligation. And I think that one of the best outcomes from last night was we got some very good input from our educators, and I think there's some similarities that you're seeing right now from that other group. I also think that on 9 December, when Morris Leatherman comes back with the community survey information, we'll have better fidelity on how these priorities stack up. We are not standing here today saying this is the answer to the problem, but we are saying this is information that we have been provided, and you need to hear also how the educators piece dovetails into this. And we want to just continue to be positive and move forward and figure out not just our near-term solutions and challenges, along with longer-term, what is it that we need in our school community for the enhancement of our entire community. So that's why you see a lot of different things on here, and I think you'll see some more.
So I have a question, just going off from Brian's question. Are there going to be any surprise items that the district's going to bring that are not on this list, that are your recommendation as a district, saying, hey, this is what we need to accommodate growth?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So, I mean, do you anticipate it'll just be a version of this list and say, hey, these are our priorities?
I believe so at this time, yes, sir.
Okay, I guess I'm just concerned here. We have,
We're wasting time.
We have 3 weeks left. Like, why aren't we sharing it right now?
Again, I think you have to go through a deliberate process. I think you have to get broader input, or then it becomes an exercise, and we could, as administrators, we could do that in a vacuum, and I don't think that's good for the community.
Director Anderson,
Yeah,
did you have a comment?
I think probably my challenge with this is we have a lot of advisory councils, and I feel like, I don't know, I have served on several of them, and I don't feel like the community input is exactly the same across advisory councils, and so I think that's something for us to consider in terms of what makes it to this board, and this meeting and this consideration at this level. So I probably am in the same boat that I would have maybe just appreciated kind of the district filter before we were to receive this as a board, just because, I think we just want to think about equitable influence across.
Yeah, and I think,
Advisory
kind of just to echo what the superintendent mentioned was just, having a level of transparency and not giving you any filtered list or recommendation. I owed that to, the advisory group to ensure that what they put forth and agreed upon at that last meeting was what I showed. And I think if you ask any of them, that's the list as it stands, as they provide. And I want to make sure you have that, so there is no unfiltered list. But at some point, the staff, and the superintendent will provide probably a refined recommendation, based on the totality of the information, and he'll provide you with, the ability to make an informed decision.
So the meeting last night was the principal or people coming together to evaluate this list?
No,
different.
there was no list. It was basically an exercise very similar to what we did here, is asking the educators what absolutely must be done in terms of facilities, what needs to be done, what should be done, what we would like to be done. And they basically went through, I guess I'd call it a brainstorming list, and they consolidated all the information on some whiteboards, and now we're putting that together for you to review, as it was provided to us. And in that list, there were some things that were very similar, that kind of was along these lines. There was a couple things that were maybe a little bit, shades of variation. And then there were some things in there were simply maintenance items that I need to take care of and address. And so we will sort all that out, but I will give you the list as it was provided to us. And then again, we can kind of filter out some of the stuff that doesn't really apply, if you will. But I'll have the staff look at those maintenance items, and we will take corrective action as appropriate.
Director Cameron.
Just one comment, I think we can't go back and do this, obviously, but for future advisories, for any of our advisories, I think it's important that we consider advisories that represent the demographics of our student body and their families. I knew almost everyone in this advisory, which means there's a lot of elementary voices, and that's great. But I hardly didn't know a person in the room. And so I think it's important for us to think about how we're recruiting and how we're making sure all voices are represented in some sort of process. So I'm not sure how the 10 were identified to be part of this, but I don't think it was representative of our
We will certainly review the process and make sure it is more rigorous and inclusive the next time.
Director Baker.
I just have one quick question, because this isn't the first time we've seen this information. This was presented to us before. One of the questions that I had from that previous presentation was the changes in the middle school model based on teachers needing to serve like multiple grade levels. Is that something that you got feedback from our teacher group on? Because I would like to hear an educator's perspective on middle school and how that model works. So that's just a question that I continue to have.
Okay. In terms of last light, no, we kind of focused on the facilities aspect of that, but we can certainly, I can pass that to teaching and learning. We can kind of provide you some feedback on that.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge the work that the facilities group and folks within the district that put this together. So I totally understand. It was something that you guys have created. You're presenting it. We're going to do a survey and the survey with the community will either validate or not the things on the list, because I'm assuming the survey is going to contain these kind of questions that are on this list. You'll have a district lens and you'll have a staff lens, and then that will come to us in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll decide.
Yeah.
So.
And again, you guys have explained, I mean, there is a requirement that we go out and do some sort of advisory group in order to pursue a bond on this. So, yeah, and there's probably never going to be perfect. But I guess my concern is, with 3 meetings left before we have to make a decision, I'd like everything to be on the table so we can be pounding through it and figuring out.
No, absolutely. When
Yeah.
I get the information and it's collated, and I will send it to you. I will not withhold information for sure, because that's if I've making an informed decision, and I got to provide you with that information so you can make those quality decisions. And if I'm not providing the information or you need additional information, please send those RFIs to us and we'll work those as quickly as possible. That's kind of why we've done this in terms of an iterative process. From the 11th on, and continue to do so tonight, and then on the 2nd, and then ultimately on the 9th. Okay. All right. So you've seen this slide before. There's really no changes, but just in terms of completeness, just wanted to make sure that you had this here as part of the packet. Okay. So I was asked to do a couple other things here. I was asked to kind of develop an ALC concept for Lakeville South High School. So that's what we did in concert with Wold Architects and Loeffler. They did a pretty good job on a quick turnaround for this. If you'll notice, the orange box there is kind of where they have templated the best spot to build that ALC. We built that just kind of based on some feedback with our ALC staff, teaching and learning, what we could put into that staff that's reasonable based on what we do now, and based on our current staffing, what could we reasonably, an area of number of students we could support, and so that's what we came with. Budget $15.3 million. Build time is approximately 17 months. And it's up there, if you're familiar with South, up there on the staff side where the staff interest is at, and putting in a space there that is separate, and for the most part self-contained, but then also providing access to other curricular opportunities as available and needed for that particular student body.
I have a question about that. So if we were to move the ALC over to South, would that be more usable space for students over at Kenwood?
Well, the current space of the ALC at Kenwood is a bit challenging, as you know, and is probably not an ideal learning environment, but there is certainly some opportunities to use that space either for learning or some type of other facility. Really, at the end of the day, that space will not be wasted or go unused. But as we kind of make decisions, then we can kind of decide what we do with that space.
Would any of our lease space fit in there, like any community ed offices or anything like that?
Sure, we can certainly take a look at that based on the priorities of the school board and how we want to do that, right? It's open space there. There's classrooms and other such facilities, and we can kind of decide from there, as part of the decision making, either in the short term or long term. Absolutely.
Sure. Director Thompson.
This is just general comment. I don't think I'm aligned in having an ALC building next to the school, the high school. I feel like there was a desire to have them as a separate building, as a separate entity. I know that there's amenities that they could take advantage of if they were in next to the high school, but I don't know. That's where I'm at right now.
Director Anderson.
I do think this, and you were not here, so this is not your issue, of course, but like there were previous presentations that were really made to sell us about why this was a great solution for our Pathways students. And so during that conversation, if I'm remembering correctly, there was discussion about how the Pathways students did not want to be at the high schools. And so I guess I just want to...
You were saying that this location was good or no?
previously, when we kind of asked, would they really want to be at Kenwood, and is that really a good fit, and should we be looking at the high school, the messaging at that time was the Pathway students did not want to be at the high school. Am I remembering this correctly?
They didn't want to be included back into the high schools. Because
I
we
thought
talked about like making spaces where they could be back in the high schools. But this is like a separate building, so it's kind of similar to that conversation.
Yeah, I
but
think
different.
it's, you know, ultimately, I think it's kind of like a hybrid, right? And it's separated, but it's connected. And I think that provides you some flexibility in terms of access to other resources in the larger high school. Maybe, you know, some students will be okay with doing some things in the high school as we ease them back into doing that thing, or not, because it is, you know, physically kind of separated, if you will. It have its own interests. It's up on the staff side, so really not, you know, part of, you know, where the normal students enter there. So, you know, there is a level of separation. I would offer to you, sure, a separate facility, but, you know, trying to be good stewards of the resources, you know, the limited resources that we have at the same time. So it's kind of, you know, we got to kind of pick what we want to do. If you go with a separate facility on a separate site, I mean, that the cost just goes up exponentially. So I would just, you know, offer that.
Yeah. Director Cameron.
So I think, Director Anderson, to your comment, I see this as retaining an ALC, maybe a hybrid type, but there's ALPs too, which is maybe what you thought about before, a program rather than a center. So like, why is that a high school, for example, has an ALP, where the ALP is within the high school, and maybe that's what there is resistance to here? No, okay.
No, I think Director Anderson, you're exactly correct. The conversations we had in the past about this was having essentially a separate ALC building, knowing I think the conversation was around students not having to be in that environment because that's part of the challenge of their education experience. And so we used to be over in the building over there next to the Art Center. That became a situation where the cost of repairing and maintaining that facility exceeded the value of the building. So I think you're exactly right that was the conversation. And so the long-term view was always about how do we get a better facility for ALC for the long term, and that's a building, either a leased building that's converted that has the capacity to provide the needs of the students, and also pathway opportunities for those students. That's the conversations that I recall.
Director Baker.
So I had requested for what this would look like, because as part of the facilities discussion, there was a proposal about Pathways Academy as an add-on, but there was no proposal as to what that would look like. So it was really hard for the facilities group to figure out, like, is this something that's even viable? Because we weren't given any options as to what building it would actually work on. There was nothing like this. So thank you, Lucas, for providing that. But if we had to have the discussion about like being thoughtful and planful and thinking facility-wise what would be the best option, I completely 100% agree with Director Thompson that I would love to have a career and technical institution that would house our Pathways Academy, and then also that both high schools could access to help with the high school numbers that are going to be increasing and to provide pathway opportunities. So yeah, I think that would be a greater option.
What's the square footage on this that we're projecting?
I do not have that with me. So it's roughly nine classrooms, and there's some other spaces in there. So it kind of a mini, I don't want to call it a mini school, but that's, for lack of a better term, I can get you the square footage on that, though. Okay. Guess we're good. All right. Okay. So the other thing was the fourth middle school, kind of try to do a concept comparison here. So the expansion option, if you will, that's kind of the things that we've presented previously. So those options 1 and 2, if you will. And then if we were to do a new middle school, what would that look like? And so just kind of running down the list here, I'll just highlight a few items. Really for the option 1 and 2, that solves all the problems at the 3 middle schools in terms of capacity and also ensures that those facilities are more equitable. I would offer to the group equity among schools has been a consistent theme, whether it's with the educator group or our facilities task force group. Previous iterations before this, equity among buildings is always an important consideration. A new middle school really just solves that capacity problem in that middle school. And then you would have one, new middle school, and then you'd have 3 middle schools that are, we'll just say less equitable than the new middle school just by virtue of that being a new building. Cost you have there. We also have to remember that there's land acquisition.
Director Baker.
So I just want to clarify your question there. So you're saying like when you're thinking about building the new middle school, that this would be like then we would have like a 4 middle school model. And I guess like when I was thinking about it, I was thinking that we would build like the bigger, newer middle school and take one of the old middle schools offline, McGuire, because it doesn't have a lot of room for updates or anything like that, and it's the oldest building. Is that not something that you were thinking about? Like I thought that was part of our discussion.
Yeah, we certainly considered it, and then when you look at all of the square footage of McGuire Middle School, and then we take that offline, then what do we do with that? There is talk of putting all these other things inside McGuire Middle School. Then there's cost associated with retrofitting that middle school into something else. And so when we just try to balance the cost and the equity and all of that, that is certain we can run down that course of action, but it was just less viable than kind of what we presented here or a 4th middle school.
I think the discussion around that was the reason that we were talking about that, because I think that was part of it, was because when we think about our lease space and what we have coming up, the district office is one of those things. And if we're going to go out to the community and ask for money, that's not usually something that they want to approve right away, is something for administrators when they would much rather like approve something new for our students that they're going to use. So our thought was that we would build the new middle school bigger so that all of the middle schools then there'd be 3 online, taking McGuire offline and then putting the DO as part of McGuire so that we're kind of taking some money off the plate, but then also solving an issue because that's just an ask that it's hard for the community to approve.
Was this part of, I don't recall this discussion, was this years ago?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it. It was on the same lines of Lakeville United Academy.
Well, so I would just like to offer a couple things with that because that's an interesting idea. The leases that you would, I think you could actually put an ALC. You could put community ed, which is across the street in a leased facility, the district office. The challenge you would run into in terms of costs would be land acquisition for a new school, 36-month build time, maybe longer, for a new school, and then how do you deal with the 28 surge in students that will be in our middle school while you're doing that. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying those are some of the things that you would want to do because you want to get the leases off of the books, so to speak. So ALC is in Kenwood Trail now, and that's not a leased facility. So you could get 2 leases of the 3 major leases that we have. The other one's Track 2 in the maintenance facility out there. I don't know that you could fit those 3 in there. The conversation around a south side, and I know this is controversial for some folks, early childhood on the south side could maybe even fit in there as well as another solution. But I don't know if we could actually fit all that in, but those are some things that have been talked about.
Well, and then my thought process around it as well is that if we move pathways over there, would there still be some options for career classes or career pathways that some of our other students could access? I think we have a fantastic Chamber of Commerce and business community that's been looking for opportunities to provide for our students, and that's something that we haven't been able to do because we don't have career pathways. But then I think about the options of, for example, like our special ed students would use like a PAYS lab that trains them on how to do certain work tasks, but we have no room in our high schools to put anything like that in. But if we had space at McGuire, that could be something that our special ed students could access as well. And I would love to reach out to the business community and see if they would be willing to sponsor like a PAYS lab or something. But I'm just saying, like, I've had just, those were conversations that we've had before, and I would like to be thoughtful and planful and maybe creative about some of these things that take care of some of our issues further down the road, instead of being like, this will take care of this right now, but it's still a lot of money. So just, I don't know. That's just my thought process around it.
Director Thompson.
I don't think I'm not aligned to a new middle school build out yet. When we look at the enrollment projections, yes, we're adding 1,000 additional students, but that's like in the next 10, 15 years. We've got an immediate need. I don't want to wait 3 years. It costs more money to buy land. And then if we end up, retrofitting a McGuire Middle School, we have a lot of football fields, parking lots. This is a lot of added space. That what are we going to do that with that for? I would be more in favor of making sure we've got a plan for the 3 middle school expansions or the incoming kids. I would be in favor of maybe considering something where it's 3-4 story building where you could do community ed, you could do ALC in that particular building and the district services. We don't need to buy this massive land size for a middle school or a high school. And so that might be probably, in my mind, the most optimal way. Now, in addition, I mean, we could just scrap all of this and do the Lakeville United campus, which is one high school that fits all 5,000 students in one, and convert the 2 high schools into middle schools. But that's for another day, maybe. But
5 middle schools.
Yeah. So that's where I'm leaning towards is the three middle school expansion, and then some sort of roadmap. Not sure how soon or how quickly. Of can we just buy land or an existing building where we can add 3-4 stories or has the capacity for district services, community ed, ALC, and maybe a tech center in some capacity. So that's where I'm leaning towards.
Well, there is some land, I think, on the southwest side that is 54 acres of property that I think the UCA has up for sale. Maybe Director Reichenberger, you didn't know about that, so I'm just, I think everybody else kind of has a sense for that. We also have the 27 acres of property that we wouldn't have to do any land acquisition with, that's across from Trinity Lutheran and South High School there on the other side of the road, that used to have some codicils on there that have expired, that kind of made that a little difficult for us because we had to get consent from the business areas around there. I believe those have expired. I can double check with the city administrator, but that's 27 acres. I think for a middle school, and I know there's some Wold folks here and Loeffler folks here that
60 acres.
60 acres is what I think the standard is. So couldn't fit a middle school over in that area by Trinity, but you could do something else, to your point, Director Thompson. So I just want to make sure everybody's kind of aware of that as well.
Director Anderson.
I think that's just what it feels like a little bit is missing with this, is just how can, like a work session, I think would have been helpful for, and various people involved in the district, just to, what are the 10 to 12 things right now that we feel like are either a cost issue for us, like the lease space, or what the needs are, and how do we accomplish something big with the least amount of ask for the community. And so that's probably what me personally am challenged with, is having kind of one presentation that some of it is driven by the facilities task force, which I appreciate, but also just not having kind of various heads at the table to kind of evaluate that. So different options, but. So I like some of these ideas, but I also know we're approaching a time when we have to vote on this, and that feels like we don't have enough time.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, and then the last thing I would highlight on this slide is just to keep in mind the tax burden that we are going to assume, and then when we do that, and making sure that as we make these decisions with all of these ideas, that we know that sometime in the future we may have to do something else, and making sure that we have that capability to do so in the future.
Can I ask one more clarifying question? Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the Performing Arts Center at the middle school sorry, this is going backward, but
Facility advisor.
where, from the Facilities Advisory Group, where, is there a proposal for which middle school that would be at?
Century.
Okay, and are we concerned at all about equity with regard to that?
Well, we're trying to improve the equity with the Performing Arts Center. So, I mean, that was the whole intent of doing that, having that one there kind of centrally located. And Century is the best location, just, engineering-wise, and to make that happen there.
Yeah.
Director Cameron.
As we percolate on this, with the ALC Lakeville South concept, how has the principal or staff there been consulted, given what I've learned from previous conversations about the ALC?
Oh, they've been involved. They've provided all, yeah, we're tied in with Margaret and her team, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Margaret's been part of all the conversations.
Okay.
Just for the board, so we will be back next week. I can't remember, do we have conflict with 9/17? No, we're coming back on the 2nd for a special meeting, hopefully to get more into the details on this and just discuss, what our opinions are on the different aspects, and we'll have some more information from the district on their recommendations, so we can get a better idea of whether we're in alignment or not, so.
December 9th is 9/17.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
The 7 o'clock. Okay.
Okay, so last slide on the facilities vision. Again, we were asked about, what are the future levies, voting, renewals that need to happen. Bottom line, the next required voter approval is 2033 and 2035. If you look over there to the extreme right, the board can renew 2 levies in 27 and 29. But then as we get into 2033 and 35, those will require voter approval. And so as we sequence our future potential bond referendums and things of that nature, we just need to keep that in mind.
Director Thompson.
So this is one of those unique scenarios where the state 2 years ago gave school boards the authority to renew an existing levy for another 10 years through a voice vote. It does not need to go to the public. This is one that it doesn't add more. There's no additional riders or whatever. It's just like whatever you got, you get to continue it for the next 10 more years, which is the length of a operating levy renewal. This upcoming one for next year is $11.2 million, which is more than the 3.5 of the technology budget, but also significantly greater than the 1.5 that the board did a voice vote earlier this year. And so this is one of those where, we've got to decide next year, are we going to do a voice vote again, or are we going to bring this to the public and let them decide, since it's a very large number compared to previous operating levies. We've got an extra $400 per pupil capacity. Where do we consider adding more, letting this expire, and then doing a newer one with a higher dollar number amount so that we've got some flexibility for additional things? And if we end up going with a middle school or other things, we've got to fund the operations of the middle school. And so then we'd have to save some of that $4 or $5 million for the operation expenditures when that middle school comes online, if we build a new one. So good to know, and so I appreciate that in regards to when we do the levies, 2027 and then 2029. So
Not really a great time because it's just levy, levy, levy.
yeah.
But
And I think this goes back to do we just do one big one and not coming back every 2 years, 3 years, and the community is like, oh, we're doing another levy and another levy, and then if we end up, doing a voice vote, are we, while the community members did vote for us and for us to make the decisions that's in the best interest of our school district, but again, these are also $11 million that we're going to continue to get for the next 10 years, and so things to think about. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to transition to attendance area alignment. And the purpose of this is to inform the school board and the community on the process and to communicate the objectives and criteria for this effort. We're not making any recommendations tonight, nor will we ask for any decisions, merely some information to inform the board of what we are doing and how we are approaching the process for attendance area alignment. Okay, so really the process here, just like to illuminate and ensure that we understand that this is really a continuation of previous work. We've looked at the previous attendance area discussions and the work that's been done in the past year and previous years, and all that is still relevant and valid and considered. And this current group consists of 17 district staff and school leaders, which is really a similar composition to what was used previously to make recommendations to the board. Previous community input we believe is still valid and considered. During this effort, attendance areas will be developed against written criteria and objectives that I will brief here in the next few slides. And then here is the timeline that we've been working on. So we've established criteria and objectives for acceptable attendance areas for this district. We reviewed some first draft of attendance area recommendations. We did that last week, and continue to work through the staffing of that. We will again look at another solution on the 2nd of December based on some RFIs and some work that needed to be done on the first draft, and then be prepared to present that to the school board on 16 December for consideration, not decision. We believe that decision needs to come in January, as it's really tied to our staffing levels and organization meeting that we do in January. So that's kind of how we were sequencing this effort. Okay, so attendance area alignment objectives. So really, again, being a continuation of previous efforts, we looked back at everything that was done. I reviewed all of the attendance area discussions, school board meetings, et cetera, looked at previous objectives and really distilled it down to really 3 things that we believe we should be focusing on in terms of our attendance areas. 1, ensure room for long-term growth. Mitigating future attendance area changes by aligning initial occupancy of our schools with expected rates of growth. The superintendent previously mentioned Northeast, Southwest as significant areas of future growth. Number 2, maintain a diverse and balanced student body, ensure populations meet all statutory requirements for diversity and balance. So going through that calculus to make sure that we have schools that are diverse and well-balanced in terms of the student body. And then lastly, we want to maintain the daily desired experiences for both our students, staff, and teachers so they can achieve academic excellence. And part of that is making sure that we have schools that are well-balanced in terms of occupancy in each school. Okay, so we so based on those objectives, we have some attendance area alignment criteria. We really focused on the elementary and the middle school level. There is a variation for the middle school level, and I'll get to that in a second. But in terms of the elementary, we wanted to establish an initial occupancy between 65-70% of school capacity in areas that have growth potential, Northeast, Southwest. Establish initial occupancy between 75 and 80% of school capacity in areas that have minimal growth potential. So really kind of maybe the middle of our district, if you will. We want to maintain that racial, social, economic diversity, special education to the maximum extent possible. Maintain integrity of our neighborhoods, and I put parentheses, housing clusters. Really difficult in terms of, how you identify a neighborhood and a subdivision and things like that. But, based on our, knowledge of the school district and our neighborhoods, I think we're pretty attuned to that. So trying to maintain that to the greatest extent possible. And again, no non-contiguous attendance areas that we had previously. And then minimize movement of students from current schools to the greatest extent possible, so no wholesale changes, if you will. So really just trying to modify what we have to make sure it fits all of this criteria to the greatest extent possible. And so we've been doing that diligently over the past couple of weeks.
Director Thompson.
I appreciate number 5. I just want to get some feedback from the group here. If we're going to rip the Band-Aid, and I hate to use that term, but it's like if we're going to do this, let's do it so that we don't have to make changes 5-10 years from now. And again, we're adding 1,000 students over the next 10-15 years. If there are places that are landlocked, like Orchard Lake, I'd like to see it at higher capacity than 75. I mean, if we can fit 85% capacity at Orchard Lake, let's have that higher. Like the southwest area, or southwest or southeast, Lakeville Elementary should be way lower, like 60%, so that when the growth comes from Elko, New Market area, we've got capacity there. Same with Highview and or Cherry View. That totally makes sense. I get that 75, 80% is for areas that have minimal growth, but that doesn't allow us to maximize our building capacity and also maximize the resources that we have there. And so if it makes sense, and this is from my point of view, if it makes sense to let's fill it up, let's make sure that those kids feel like there's people in those, like you walk in Orchard Lake right now, it's compared to, go to Eastview, it's much different from where it was before. So let's make it, in my mind, livelier, have the students there. We've got a principal there, and take advantage of the maximization potential. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're doing, sir. We picked 80% really there as a target just to work the math, and then we've gone down to the level where, 80%, or whatever percentage that school came out to, how many student space is that for really that unexpected growth? We get additional students in. So we want to have a little bit of space there, full but not too full, right? To your point, because we're bringing we want that space down there in areas where we know there's going to be a lot of growth. And then that will also prevent us from having to make a lot of changes year to year. We will still review the attendance areas every year, but if we do this correctly and we're very precise about it, I believe we can kind of minimize those movements to the greatest extent possible. Leaving a little room in each school, not too much to your point, and then leaving a lot of room in those schools where we know. Highview is an example. We walk outside of Highview, there are buildings, houses going up as we speak, and so that will have a little bit lower, initial occupancy than it does now. Okay, so we will provide all that data, on the 16th of December.
Sounds good.
Well, with Highview, I don't think we could fit any more in there.
There's
There's only one direction we can go there.
There's always room for one more, right, sir? Okay. All right, we're good here. Yes. Okay. All right. So really, the change here, we kind of just adjusted the numbers a little bit as initial start points for our analyst and our team to kind of work in that. A couple additional items. Number 3 there, we wanted to provide some relief to Century Middle School that was requested by the principal, and we're honoring that as a recommendation and kind of doing what we call a 2-step. So let's give some relief to Century Middle School, and then based on The options that you choose here in the near future, we will have a kind of a second step that is supplements the first step, if you will, to minimize movement, where we kind of then adjust those attendance areas. So in the 28-29 school year, we're looking good in terms of enrollment.
Do you know, just from a transportation standpoint, is it easier to access, for those southwest developments, is it easier to access McGuire over Kenwood Trail?
I wouldn't say it's easier. It's just a long trip, down to the southwest. We have Schmidt and Sons in the meeting with us, and they're taking a look at how that transportation, will occur, and there's no significant challenges at this time, because we're not making wholesale changes to attendance areas.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about for future, expansion and adding capacity at McGuire, if that's the recommendation. So everyone on the southwest side, I'm assuming, will go to McGuire, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, and then the other bottom three there remain the same from the elementary schools criteria.
Director Thompson.
All right, and so this boundary thing is close to my heart because 2 years.
I wouldn't have expected that.
I would want to say, so the one thing that I would ask is, and again, I don't know if this is the right methodology in how you kind of put this together, but I felt like we got a lot of emails from parents that say, I'm driving past the middle school to get to the next middle school. And so if there is a way, and I don't know if this is possible, where you put a pin dot in Century, if you are within a 1 mile radius or a 1.5 mile radius, north, south, west, whatever, that's your school. Like, it doesn't matter. And so that you're zoned to go there. Because I feel like I think in some previous models, you were like maybe a half a mile away from the school, but now you're going to a different middle school.
Right.
Now, I get there are instances where the blob or the boundary design is going to look kind of funky with that approach, but what it does is if you can walk to the middle school within a mile, like, you should be able to go to that school. So
Right.
that's just one thing.
Can I make one recommendation?
Yeah.
That, we're going to get a presentation on this at some point
Right.
in time. Should we?
Well, no,
I'm
because
assuming they're not going to change their
gonna
models that they're
But if they're
doing right now.
designing it now, you should.
Yes, sir. So that is a consideration and something that is kind of part of really kind of number 4, I guess. That is, and I think when you look at the boundaries, they're going to be a little bit more palatable to what you're saying, where kind of the folks around that school go to that school. But we also have to recognize that we kind of, at some juncture, we built all these schools kind of in odd places. Probably at the time it was the right place at that time, but now it's kind of not. So we got to kind of work through that. But I think you will see that they are a lot more palatable in terms of that, what you're talking about.
I'm just thinking there's probably going to be questions and comments we have,
Yeah.
probably the same things that we bring up again. But
Right.
Director Cameron.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm also going to offer, just as you're thinking about the designs, I actually disagree with my fellow director, Thompson. I think lines should just be drawn where it's the most efficient and practical. There are many people who drive past schools right now that are closest to them. I'm one of those, and that's just how it is in a district this size with this many buildings and this kind of growth. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but I think that you can't privilege where a home location is to their school necessarily.
Right.
The other thing I'm going to say is, and we heard it in public comment tonight, and I appreciate this perspective about people wanting to have feeder schools, right? Elementaries feed to a middle and middle to a high school. We do not have that model right now. So just to be clear, some schools have that, right? Maybe Cherry View, like the presenter spoke to, has that right now. But for many elementaries, there is not one middle school where kids are going. And similarly, there's not one middle school to high school. And so we don't have a feeder system, and that should not be, in my opinion, one of the things that we are considering when designing boundaries, because it should be based on what's affordable and equitable for all students, not privileging certain schools over others to stay with their peers.
Right. It is certainly a consideration, but it is on the lower end, and it's kind of the first thing that falls away when we can't meet some of this other criteria. And then to the busing question. Yes, in Schmittian, sometimes the road is just where the road is and you can't get around that, and the way the school and the boundaries are currently laid out. But again, we are kind of definitely, I just want to make it clear that we are definitely kind of considering all that to the greatest extent possible, where possible. But again, the criteria is the criteria here, and we want to make sure that's first, because we want our, in terms of the objectives, we want our schools to be, have the right level of enrollment in them so that we all have the daily desired experience and we're not, taking away from that. And so we're definitely, staying focused on the important stuff, but also trying to consider those things where we can, because we understand that it's important to the community, and we want to try to honor that to the best of our ability.
I appreciate that. It is important to the community. However, I think the community doesn't understand that a lot of things they're arguing against are things that currently exist.
Right.
So it's just not what you get used to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I appreciate that, ma'am. Thank you. Okay.
Anything
And
else? Thank you.
that's it. That's all I got.
right.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Policy Committee, second reading of Policy 213. Director Cameron, did you have anything that you wanted to note or discuss?
Nothing new since our last meeting, but just to update, Director Reichenberger, we are recommending changes to Policy 213, which would eliminate the open meeting, following open meeting for our committees in order to help us expedite work. This came up with the Policy Committee in particular. We had an audit from the Minnesota School Board Association with significant, like a 3-year project to get all of our policies up to snuff. And it would be great if we could work in Google Docs and update documents online, and right now we're not able to do things like that, knowing that any changes that would ever come to policy are just recommendations to the full board, and they would be then reviewed by the full board for 2 readings if there are significant edits, such as the one we're talking about tonight.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Any board member reports? Director Baker?
So last week we met for 917, and there were some updates that I wanted to share. First of all, we had settled our educator contract, and we were just happy that we could provide something that the teachers and the district were both agreeable to. So that's completed. Another thing that we are working on with staffing, as Director Bauman has also talked with, Superintendent, with Superintendent Favor about, one of the things that 917 has been doing is recruiting international teachers to fill some of our hard-to-fill special education spots. By doing this, we were using the J1 visa that is currently having, there's questions about being able to continue to do that. That process allows us to hire international teachers, and they're working towards their green card, the J1 visa. The issue with that right now is the current price on that will be over $100,000, which will make it impossible for the district to continue with that process. One of the things that they are looking at is the H-1B visa. That one is $8,000, so that would be obviously more affordable for us to be able to continue to hire international staff. The problem with that one is that they cannot work towards a green card with that particular visa. It's called like a cultural exchange visa, and they would have like 4 to 5 years where they could work within the United States. The part that we liked about the J1 is that they could work and obtain their visa, and then they bring their families over when they come. So it's just one of those things that we're working with right now, and some of the current things that have changed within our legislation. One of the things that we discuss at every 917 meeting is just what the current list is like for students that Lakeville or all of the districts are sending for 917. So right now, an update on that is that Lakeville has 13 students on the active wait list. There are 89 total students on that wait list. So Lakeville has 15% of the total students on the wait list. And then I'd say they've had 6 setting 4 referrals out of 50 total referrals for setting 4. 6 of those were Lakeville. So that's 12% of the total referrals received. So again, when you know that we still have 89 students on the wait list and the wait list happens all year long, you can see why hiring international teachers is so important, as those positions are difficult to fill. So that's all I have from 917. Do you have any questions on that, or Amber? Director Cameron?
Are you able to share what the 917 settlement was, or is that not public yet? Like
It's public. It was like 2 and 2.
2 and 2. Okay, thank you.
Any other board reports?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Sorry. So we, because I had the 917 meeting that was rescheduled due to Veterans Day, that was the day, it was rescheduled the day that the Public Engagement Committee was supposed to meet, so we did not meet that day because I couldn't be 2 places at once. So we didn't plan anything new as far as engagement opportunities go for the board, but we do still have some that are coming up. 2 that are building visits next week. So one of those would be, there's a tour of Crystal Lake Education Center at 9 a.m. on Thursday, December 4th, and then a tour of Pathways at 9 a.m. on Friday, December 5th. And those will kind of conclude the tours of buildings that board members had suggested or had wanted to tour. If there's other buildings that you would like us to set up tours for, we can most certainly do that. Knowing that we visited an elementary school, a middle school, Pathways, and now the Early Childhood Center, maybe a high school would be something that people are interested in. Just let us know. That's something we can set up. When we do these tours, Dr. McDonald is the one that we work with, and she helps us set those up and then works with the building principal so that the board has a tour. We do ask that you say in advance whether you're going, so you'll get those calendar invites from Kim Elson, because we try to keep that where we make sure we don't have a quorum there at any one time. So that's the only thing that we do with that. And then Director Anderson and I did have a question, given recent the recent negotiations update, and with the district moving into a mediation situation with our current contract negotiations. One of the things that we had discussed was having a meeting with teachers where we could discuss, have like a back and forth with the board. That is scheduled on Tuesday, December 16th at 5 before our board meeting, but we are wondering what the board feels about that at this time, given that they're still in negotiations and that we've moved into mediation, because we would have to be very careful about what is discussed at that session, given the current situation. Any thoughts on that?
How is this different from meet and confer that the district leads? What is the intent of this?
So our thought process was that one of the things that we always talk about is that we don't get an opportunity to really hear from teachers. For meet and confer, it's during the day, which makes it really difficult for board members to attend. So when we discussed it, it was just something where teachers could come and kind of share like what their day is about or talk about anything that they have within the district. And then board members, like in meet and confer, can ask questions if they want to. Obviously, none of those conversations can be related to contracts because that's not the purpose of that session. But yeah, it would be very similar to meet and confer. And in fact, like the district did used to host like sessions like this that were similar to meet and confer where the whole board was present. It is a past practice, so it's not something that we haven't done before. It's just we would have to make sure we have certain parameters around the conversation to not conflict with negotiations.
Would we do this with all union groups as well and non-union groups?
We could, yeah.
I think I've already shared my thoughts with you privately, but yeah, I think it's problematic given the state that we're in negotiations right now. Everything the teachers do are kind of tied back to their contract in one way or another. And again, are we going to be stopping people if they start to stray into those areas? So I just think it creates a problem. I'd love to do it after the contract is done. Or we can do it in smaller groups privately, but, you know, if the idea is here, we're going to have it here in the boardroom and discuss matters that could pertain to the contract, then I think we're possibly running afoul of some legal issues. So, and I think our district would probably agree with that, so.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I would support.
Director
Oh, go
Reichenberger.
ahead.
Yeah, I am all in favor of increasing the dialogue between the teachers and the board. I think it's a really good thing. As Director Swanson indicates, given the timing of it, it might be an issue. But I still think it's a really great idea that we should probably engage with at some point or another.
Director Anderson.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't want to feel like we have a bunch of parameters on the discussion. When we meet with the teachers and potentially other unions or non-unions, I want to feel like we can have open dialogue. So I would support moving it until we have finished negotiations.
So are we saying this would be a reschedule? Or are we saying that it's completely off the table? I want consensus on that.
I'd like to see it scheduled probably after the new year.
Okay.
I get scheduled after a contract is
Okay.
confirmed.
Yeah, I would just say once we've resolved the contract and have agreement there, we bring it back to the board and we can talk about it more.
Okay.
I mean, it's not an item on the agenda right now for discussion and vote, but again, I do think it's a conversation we should have.
No, but I would like to know, like, yes.
You're asking for an informal vote?
Not really informal, but I just need to know that, like, when we're looking for things to find for engagement opportunities for the board, that people are interested, and if we're going to take the time to schedule with the teachers and hold this type of dialogue, that we're going to have board present. Like, so, I mean, if I reschedule it and only two of us come, I don't know if that's exactly what we were looking for, so, yeah. And then if there are other groups that you would like to meet with, or if, like I said, there's buildings that the board would like to tour, we are more than happy to set that up, so that way it's on the calendar. If you want to do it, you can. If you don't, again, like, you don't have to, but we just need to know in advance so that there's not more than a quorum there. And then also there are 2 chamber things coming up this week with the holiday dinner at Porterhouse. One day, I think it's the North Choir, and then the next day they do it so the South Choir can perform. So those are just chamber events there this week too. And we try to make sure that everyone's aware of those types of things as well.
I'd like to think about it more. I'll be candid. Like, I don't know if it's part of the role that we would want to play and have these meetings with teachers directly. I see teachers, with my kids when they go to school. If you're a board of director member, and I'm just trying to bear with me as I kind of talk this out. If you're a board of director of Tesla, I don't know if they would be going to go meet with the employees of Tesla. I mean, that is why we have a superintendent. His role is to manage the district. I, as a board member, I would assume we should be getting employee experience surveys, preferably twice a year, to say how are the employees feeling of working for our district. And as a board member, I'd want to look at that metric and say, hey, it looks like they're enjoying working here or they're not enjoying working here, and establish a score that I would want him to make sure that the employees of the district hit. So I'm making a number up. Let's say if it's 90% and the score comes up at 60%, I could, hey, what are you going to do to get it to 90? And look to him to provide recommendations on how to get there. And then as a board, either we sign off on it, give them the additional funding, whatever it may be. And not that we couldn't do it, and if individual board members want to go visit the schools or talk to various teachers and so forth, I don't know. I want to just think through this. That's all.
I guess I'm So you are wanting to think through the whole public engagement committee in general, because you mentioned schools and visiting all of those things too. Like, you don't want us to set things up for other board members, you just want us to do it individually.
No, I think we can. I mean, as a board, if you guys if we want to go visit schools, you can do that we can schedule meetings and we can do that at your discretion, or you can do it individually. I don't know. I mean, it's like if I want to go visit a school, I'd contact Superintendent Bowman and say, hey, I want to go visit a school. If we've got something planned, then and it fits within my work schedule, or I can plan it and take time off or do whatever to go, then maybe I can. But I don't know, from a public engagement perspective, it's like we've been elected by the community to make a decision to manage and provide governance of how the school district is operating. And we've got one employee, and that is the superintendent. Like, he's the only person that we are supposed to manage and establish performance metrics for. Now, we are establishing an executive dashboard so that we as a governing body can ask, is the school district actually working well with the 25 key metrics that we're looking at? And so...
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal here is to get, hear the unfiltered voice of the teachers, so it's not coming through the district, which again, I'm in support of. I guess my only concern would be just making sure that we're not bypassing any protocols that are already in place with the meet and confers, and we're not overstepping on our, district's responsibilities and what they're already doing. So,
Right,
but again,
and
the idea is...
Yeah, I don't feel like we're overstepping because we've done it in the past. I guess when I think about, it's hard to know what's going on in your building if you don't go and see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's hard to know, like, I don't know what every teacher does during the day, but I would sure love to hear about some things that maybe, that are going on in their classroom. We can't have like every teacher come and present to us and say, these are the great things that I'm doing as far as like enhancing my curriculum and learning opportunities that I've set up for kids. And I would just love to hear about some of those things. So like, I like the opportunity of meeting with the teachers, and then I also like visiting the buildings, because it's one thing to sit here and listen to someone present to me and tell me how packed Highview is, but it's a whole nother thing to go and walk through the building and see a DAPE class happening in the hallway, or, the small little like tech room that they're having a second grade classroom in right now. I think those to me help me understand our job as board members better, because when I'm sitting here listening to Lucas talk about capacity, I know that 85% capacity now means that at least one space in that building that wasn't intended to be a classroom is a classroom. And I don't know if I really envisioned that way until I went to see it and it was explained to me. Because, 85% on a slide sounds like we've got all this other room that we could use, but that's not necessarily the case. Like, that would be space that would be then the commons area, and I don't think people want their kids in other spaces other than their classrooms. So I think, like, for me to understand my role, like I appreciate the visits, the opportunities to talk with principals, and I also want to be mindful of the fact that they're taking time out of their day to help board members see that perspective. So it is hard for them to schedule for 7 different people, but if we have the engagement committee that's setting up an opportunity that 3 board members can take advantage of, then that also saves their time. But that also gives them an opportunity to show us what's going on in your building. Like, let me see what's happening. And they're facilitated meetings. It's not like we're just walking into the building unannounced and wanting, it's more, I think it just gives us a lens of what's actually going on in our district. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the point of the engagement committee, is to bring opportunities forward, and then the board members can decide whether or not they want to attend. So, Director Cameron.
I was going to say, I appreciate the opportunities being set up. I think what I'm struggling a little bit with is, and a lot of this has to do with work schedule potentially.
Yeah.
But I do feel like the work, or not the work, but the visits are falling on some people more than others substantially.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us have 9 to 5s. And so I have to take time off to do this, and doing that multiple times a week, it gets hard, right? And so I think if we can more equally distribute it, it would be nice. I think as a board member, I appreciate seeing the circumstances, but I also am in a place where if I'm being told that there's an issue, like with capacity, let's say, I need to just trust that the due diligence has been done and that I don't need to see everything myself to make a decision on it. And I'm not saying it's bad to see it, of course, it is a different feeling when you see it. But I think just given that most of us are parents on this board with kids in the district and we all work, just the ability to visit during the day all the time is challenging. And I know a lot of them have been set up where, I know a lot of people just can't have very little flexibility in their job and cannot attend, so.
Any other board member reports? Director Anderson.
Just wanted to share that Superintendent Bauman and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Emily McDonald and I went to the Leadership Lakeville event, and that was really great. But what I wanted to highlight was the work that the Chamber is doing with our students. And so prior to our part of the meeting, a couple of the students were talking about the capstone projects that they're working on. Just really impressive work, and these students were presenting, and they were just such great leaders. So I just wanted to thank the Chamber for all the work that they're doing.
Superintendent Bauman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. In the spirit of the season of thankfulness, I want to, I think Carrie Pop is still in here. I want to just say thank you for the opportunity to negotiate again on the 11th of December. Also, I want to say thank you for the facilities meeting that we were able to do last night. I appreciate that. And I was going to say as well, thank you, Director Anderson, for coming to that event. And I agree with you. Our students definitely shine there, and I do appreciate our relationship with Chamber leadership. And then finally, I just want to say to all of our staff and to our educators, a heartfelt thank you for everything that you do. And we appreciate you. And this is the season to say thank you. And so I just want to say that out loud. But all of our staff that sacrifice every day for the benefit of our kids. And I just ask our whole community to just rally with us as a school district to find the right solutions and to help our young people become capable leaders in our society for the future. So thank you, and thank you, board members. Hope you all have a wonderful little break here. I know our staff and team need it, and we're going to take advantage of it. So bless you all, and thank you.
All right, recommended actions. With the departure of Director Nicholson, who was our treasurer, we're in need of a new treasurer for the next month and a half until we have elections for all positions again. So with that, I'd ask if there's anyone who would like to volunteer or nominate someone. Director Anderson?
I would like to nominate Director Reichenberger.
All right. Director Reichenberger has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? If there are none, all in favor of appointing Director Reichenberger as the treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. So you can meet with Bill Holmgren right after this. I think he'll have a big packet of information for you to review. And yeah.
Just to share, he already has, by the way. Just want to say that.
Other issue for recommended vote is vote to approve amended policy 213 as set forth in the agenda. I'll just move it along. I would move to approve the amended policy 213. Is there a second? There's a second by Director Cameron. Any discussion on the vote to approve the amended policy? If there's no discussion, I would, there being a first and a second, all those in favor of approval of the amended policy 213, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. And before we adjourn, I just want to remind everyone, looking at a special meeting next week, 6 p.m., to discuss a number of issues. But facilities,
Is it at 7?
6.
Okay.
The 9th will be at 7.
Got it.
And then 16th back at 6. So the first of 4 in a row here. But with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
First by Director Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Director Reichenberger. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.